Java project manager round interview questions and answers. Whenever we attend a interview, first question they are going to ask, explain little bit about yourself. Now, for this question, we are going to say like this. Hi, thanks for giving me this opportunity to introduce about myself. Myself Ashok, having 6 years of experience as a Java J2EE developer. I'm having good work experience with the Spring Framework and Spring Boot. Hands-on experience in using and implementing design patterns in the project. Hands-on experience in handling exceptions in the applications. I have good hands-on experience in batches development and batch scheduling. I have work experience with both backend and front-end technologies. I have good knowledge in working with databases like Oracle and MySQL. I have good experience in dealing with onshore and offshore team members, and currently I am working for so and so company. Right. So like this you can explain about yourself for this question. As you are attending an interview with the experience, you no need to explain about your educational details and your family details for this. Right. You can explain about your company, you can explain about your experience, your technical skills, and what is the project you are working on, what is your role in that project. All right. Coming to second question, what are your roles and responsibilities? This is also very important. With this question we can grab the impression from the interviewer if we answer properly. Right, let us see what will be the roles and responsibilities of a developer in a company who is having experience. First, collecting requirements from functional team in terms of BRD and FDD. BRD stands for business requirement document, which will contain high level requirements. FDD stands for functional design document, which will contain low level requirements. After getting that FDD, we will understand the requirements clearly. If we have any doubt, we will maintain our queries in a query log. So companies will use different formats for the query log. Let me show you one sample format. Here, if we have a doubt on a requirement like how many characters we need to consider for a username field, like this we need to enter the data in a query log. These are the offshore comments and these are the onshore comments. If they provided response, they will provide here. This is reported by a person, when it is reported, who to whom it is assigned, what is the status of this query, when it is responded, what are the comments of the onshore. Like this, whatever the queries you have in the requirements, you can maintain that query in a query log. Then you can send that query log to functional people to get the clarifications. Right. Then attending meetings with the functional team to get clarifications on the queries which are logged in query log. Daily meetings will be available with functional team in order to understand the queries clarifications. After meeting is completed, we will send a minutes of meeting, that is a mom, like who attended a meeting, what is discussed in the meeting, what are the items are clarified, what are the action items are there. We'll send summary of our discussion, that is called minutes of meeting. Then preparing a technical design document which will contain the details about the implementation. After that, submitting the DTD design for project architect and functional team to get the approval. After getting the approval, we will go for development. Then we'll do unit testing, code review, then committing the code to repositories, performing integration testing in the dev environment, then capturing the results of the testing like screenshots and reports. After that, support for SIT and UAT phases. Like if the project is testing in SIT, if any issue occurs, we need to fix that. Same thing for UAT also. And when the UAT is happening, we will join in the triage calls. Those are called defect triage calls in order to understand the requirements. Then you can say that preparing the documentation for development, what we have done, preparing user documentations for the requirements. Like this, you can explain your roles and responsibilities in the interview. I hope you understood this. Right. Next one. Explain about your project architecture. This is also very important. So whatever the project you are keeping in the resume, you should be able to explain the description of the project for 1 or 2 minutes, like I'm working for health insurance system where people will apply for insurance plans. Then system will determine eligibility, whether that person is eligible to get this plan or not. Then it will send a notification saying that plan is approved or plan is denied with appropriate details. Right. Then next question, how many modules are there in your project and what are those? We can say the names of the modules in the project, like if it is a user management module, administration module, eligibility module, reports module, etc. etc. So you can say all the modules that are there in your project. Fine. Next, who is your reporting manager in the current company? So this is a tricky question they're going to ask you to check your confidence. Just you can say some random name. My reporting manager is Ashok, because he is not going to come to our company to check whether that person is available or not. So you can give a random name here. Next question. Can I call your manager now to know about your performance in the project? This is also again a tricky question. So you can say that, yes, of course, you can do that. He will give very good feedback about me because I'm one of the top performer in my team. But if you call him and ask him about my performance now, he may think that I'm attending the interviews. He don't know that I'm trying for another job. He may create a problem in my current project. So once I got joined in your company, then happily you can make a call and ask him about my performance. Then it doesn't make any problem to my career. Like this, very politely, you need to convey the interviewer for this question. Next one. Apart from your regular work, what extra you have done in your company? Fine. This also you can say like this. Apart from my project work, I have provided some in-house trainings in the company to train the people on the latest technologies like boot microservices, Kafka, etc., etc. I use it to act as interview panel member when there is a requirement in a company. When the interviews are happening on weekends, I will use it to go to conduct the interviews. And when a new person joins in a team, I use it to provide the KT to them. I will feel them comfortable with the project and feel them to comfortable with the module in order to start their working. So these are the extra activities that I performed in my current company. Like that you can explain this question. Next one. Next question. Question number 8. Have you ever involved in effort estimations? Yes, generally in the company, when you are going to work on a development task, first your lead is going to ask you how much time you need to complete this task. So based on the requirement complexity, based on the risk mitigation plans, you need to identify how much time is required to complete this task, and we need to provide those informations to the team lead, right? And you need to remember that whenever you are providing estimations, you need to consider design time, development time, unit testing, and documentation also. Always will provide efforts in terms of hours. And one thing you need to remember, whenever you are providing a effort, don't consider only your experience and your technical skills. The effort what you are providing, a fresher should be able to complete it, and an experienced person should be able to also work on that. So you need to provide the average efforts by considering both the fresher as well as a experienced person. Always will provide efforts in terms of hours, like 45 hours to complete a task or 50 hours to complete a task, like that. Right. Next question. Question number 9. How many environments are there for your application? So generally in a company, we will have a local environment where we do the development, and dev environment to perform developer integration testing, system integration testing environment for testers to test our application, then user acceptance testing environment for client to test that application, then pilot environment which is a pre-production where we will perform performance testing of the applications, then production, that is a live environment. Like this you can explain several environments that are going to use in the application development. All right. Next, question number 10. Which SDLC methodology following in your project? You can say several methodologies are available, right? Like waterfall model, spiral model, V model, etc., etc. Right? Nowadays, most of the projects are developing based on Agile methodology. Now, so when we talk about Agile, immediately he may ask a question like, what is the difference between Scrum and Sprint? Right? So let us try to understand what is that Scrum and Sprint. Scrum is a stand-up meeting that happens every day to understand status of the work and to understand which person working on which task. That is a Scrum meeting. These Scrum meetings will be conducted by Scrum Master. The duration of the Scrum will not be more than 30 minutes. Just we are going to understand what we are working on, what we have worked earlier, what we are working on today. Are we facing any challenges in our work? Just we need to inform to our Scrum Master. Next, Sprint. Sprint refers to a time frame where some task that we need to complete and we need to deliver to a client. Generally, in companies which are following Agile methodology projects development, sprint duration will be like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of time. In that duration, we need to complete that development and we need to complete testing, then we need to give a delivery to a client. That is called sprint. Is time frame where we need to complete our task development and we need to deliver the project to the client. That is called as a sprint, right? Next question: what are the tools that you are going to use in your project, or what are the tools that you are already used in your project? You can say like Maven or Gradle for build tool, JUnit and Mockito for unit testing, Log4j or SL4j for logging, Putty and WinSCP or Splunk for log monitoring tools, SVN or Git or Bitbucket as a repository tool, PMD or SonarQube for code review tools, Jacoco for code coverage tool. Like that, we can say several tools that we are using in our project development. So what are the tools you are mentioning here? You should have a hands-on experience on those tools, because there may be a chance of asking some questions related to those tools also. The next question number 13: what are the design patterns you have used in your project? So you can say several design patterns that you are implemented, like singleton design pattern, strategy design pattern, MVC design pattern, front controller design pattern, cache design pattern. Like you can explain several design patterns like this, but make sure that whatever the design patterns you are explaining, you should have good knowledge about those design patterns and you should be able to implement in front of them if at all he asks to implement, right? If you don't know anything, don't mention that name here. Whatever the patterns you know and you worked on, specify only those names here. All right, next one. Question number 14: what is cache design pattern? Cache design pattern is used to reduce read operation with external sources like properties files and data sources, and which is going to improve performance of an application. Let us see here. In my application, I want to read some static data from the database. Instead of reading the data from the database every time, we can read the data only once and we can store in the cache. Whenever you need the data in the application, instead of hitting the database, we can just hit the cache to get the data, because hitting the database is a costly operation which is going to take some time, hence performance will be reduced. So load the data from the DB, store in the cache. Generally caches will be a map where we can store the data in the form of key and value pair. Wherever we need the data, read that from the cache instead of hitting the DB directly. All right, next. Oh, question number 15: what is front controller design pattern and where you used in your project? So I hope all of you already worked on Spring Framework, where we use dispatcher servlet as a front controller, right? Front controller design pattern means that controller which is going to receive all the requests of an application and which is used to perform pre-processing and post-processing of every request. So if you look at this diagram, in the Spring MVC, we will develop applications by using Spring MVC, where we will develop so many controllers. So when the request sent by a client, the request will be received by the dispatcher, then it is going to do remaining processing for that. So this dispatcher servlet can be called as a front controller. So you can mention that my project is developed based on Spring MVC, hence we are using dispatcher servlet as a front controller for our application, right? Now question number 16: how you are managing configuration properties in your project? Right, this is also very important, because for every application some configuration properties are required. We should not hard code them in the Java classes, right? So we are going to read them from properties file. In the Spring Boot application, we can use application at properties file or application at YML file to store those details. And instead of reading the YML every time, we can create application properties class by using enable configuration annotation, and we can store the data into that properties class only one time. So you can say we are using YML files to store the application properties. Here you can mention that we are using profiles also to maintain properties specific to a environment, like dev properties, QA properties, UAT properties, and production properties, etc. Because from environment to environment, properties will be different for database and SMTP, like that. So we can maintain environment specific properties by using Spring Boot profiles concept. You can explain that how you are created that class and how profiles are created here. Next, question number 17: then how you will connect with onshore team? First, let us understand what is onshore and offshore. Onshore team means the team members who are working in a client location, they are called onshore. And the people who are working in non-client location, they are called offshore. Suppose I am working from Hyderabad for a USA client project. Then I am in Hyderabad, that means I am in offshore. There is a functional person in the client location. He is called as a onshore. He is trying to ask here how you will communicate with your onshore team members. In the companies, we will use several channels to communicate, like VoIP calls or bridge calls or WebEx meetings or Skype business links we are going to use in order to communicate with them. Fine. Next, question number 18. Have you ever communicated with the client? So generally, in my previous experience, I never communicated with the client directly because uh, we don't have access for the client directly in order to communicate. But generally, we will communicate with the functional team who are in the onshore, who will be working in the client location. Whenever you get a doubt on the requirement, we will communicate with our functional team. They will provide the clarifications to us. Functional team can communicate with the client. They will have a access for the client communication directly. But offshore team members most of the times will not have the chances to get the communication with the client. But sometimes clients will visit development centers. Sometimes they will visit offshores. At that time, you may get a chance to communicate with the client. So you can answer according to your situation for this question, right? Next, what is mom? Mom stands for minutes of meeting. Generally, in the companies, when we are working in a project, several times we will have a meetings to discuss about the requirements or to discuss about the defects reported or to discuss about the roadmap or the next 1 year or next 2 years, like that, right? So once that meeting is completed, it is highly recommended to send what points are discussed in that meeting. That is called minutes of meeting, right? Next question. Question number 20. Have you ever involved in defect triaging? Yes, you need to say this as an experienced person. We will interact with the UAT team members when they identified issues, right? So UAT stands for user acceptance testing that will happen in the client location. Once the UAT team reported a bug, that bug should be handed to a developer in the offshore, right? So to have hand over those defects from UAT to the development team, there will be a meeting. That meeting is called as a defect triage meeting. So you need to say that yes, I involved in the defect triage meeting for the UAT calls, like this, right? All right. Question number 21. What is BRD? BRD stands for Business Requirement Document, which contains high level requirements and scope of the requirements that will be prepared by functional team. Right. Question number 22. What is TTD? Yes. So this is also very important for a developer because developer is responsible to prepare technical design documents in the projects. Right. TTD stands for Technical Design Document, which contains requirement implementation details like what is the business requirement, what is scope of the requirement, what are the informations that are confirmed by functional team, what are the assumptions that we are making while working with this document, and what are the limitations available for this requirement, what are the known issues of this task or of this story development, like, and class diagrams, flow diagrams and sequence diagrams that are for development that we are using. And as part of this story development, what are the tables we are creating, or are you modifying any existing tables in the database? That information we need to maintain, and screenshots of our FDD document and the templates we need to keep here. If you are using any batches in this story development, we need to specify name of the batch and purpose of the batch and what is the scheduling of those batches, like when the batch has to be executed, like daily or weekly, quarterly or monthly. And similarly, we will provide appendix of the TTD document. So let me show you a simple CTD structure like this, which will contain document history, BRD number and locations of the FDDs and SharePoints, what is existing system, proposed system, assumptions, confirmations, process diagrams, screens, batch details, database details, and apex. Like this, when created the document, where the location of the FDD, what is the scope of the requirement, all these points that we can mention in the technical design document. Generally, developer is responsible to prepare this technical design document, which will contain as part of which release we are, as part of which sprint we are developing this, and what is the idea of the story that BRR we are going to specify here. Right. I hope you understood what is technical design document. All right. Now, Next question. Question number 23. What is the difference between technical design document and functional design document? Functional design document contains details about the requirement and it will be prepared by functional or business team. Technical design document contains implementation details of the requirement and that will be prepared by developer. Right. Next. Question number 24. Do you know UML diagrams? Yes, you need to always, when whatever the question you are answering, you need to say that yes, I know that I have used in my project in so and so situation. Then that interviewer will get a good impression on you. So for this question, yes, in my current project, I prepared many technical design documents. As part of the design documents, I created class diagrams, sequence diagrams, and flow diagrams. Right. Now, question number 25. What is the difference between class diagrams and sequence diagrams? All right. In software engineering, class diagrams are going to look like this. So they are going to represent the dependencies in the classes, like which classes are talking to which class, whether they are talking like a specialization or a generalization or a realization, how one class is communicating with the another class, whether it is a easy relationship or a as a relationship, what are the variables that are using in the class, what are the methods that are using in the class, we need to represent in the UML format. This is called as a class diagram. Next one, sequence diagram. Sequence diagram represents how one component is going to interact with another component, what is the execution flow of these components will be represented in the diagrammatic format. So this is a logical view how system is going to run, right? How code, how application is going to run internally. Those details we are going to represent in the sequence diagram, right? So in this situation, that person may ask you to draw the sample diagrams and you should be able to write them by taking small examples of your project classes, like controller classes are talking to service classes and service classes are talking to DAO classes. And coming to execution flow, end user interacting with the presentation layer and he will submit a form, request will go to controller and controller will call the service method will call the repository method will interact with the database and how results will be returned, we should be able to represent in the diagram format. So this is a sample class diagram and this is a sample sequence diagram. All right, next question number 26. Which tools you use to create a TTD? So there are several tools available in the market in order to create those TTDs, like Enterprise Architect from the Sparks company and Microsoft Visio or Star UML, etc. Like that, we can use several tools. When you mention one tool name that you are using in your project, like Microsoft Visio or Star UML or EA tool, right? Next, question number 27. How you will get FDD in a company, or how you are getting FDD in your project, right? So already as we discussed, FDD stands for functional design document, right, which will contain the details about the requirement that will be prepared by functional team. Once the FDD preparation is completed by functional team, they will submit that for client for approval. Once the client is approved that, they will share the FDD with the project team members by using a SharePoint, or they will share that by using a repository. So if you are working for a level 5 BMNC companies, they will use the SharePoint locations to store the FDDs. Once they uploaded the FDDs to the SharePoint, they will share the URL. By using that URL, we can download the FDD document. If it is a small scale company, they will exchange the FDD documents through emails, or they will store the FDD documents in the repository like SVN or GitHub. So several things, like you can mention that we are using SharePoint to store the FDDs. From SharePoint, I will download the FDD like that. All right. Like, do you know what is query log? Yes, you need to say that. Yes, in my project we are using query log. So when we will use this query log? When we have doubts on FDD document, we will prepare our queries in query log and we'll upload that in the SharePoint. Functional team will provide clarifications to the queries which are logged in query log. Daily meetings will be happening in the company to get the clarifications on the query log. So let us see sample format of the query log. Suppose if you have a doubt on a requirement for field validation. So what is the version number of FDD, section number, which module, and what is the query you are having? Do you have any comments that you want to convey here? And offshore comments, onshore comments, who reported that query, when reported, when it is got the response from the onshore functional team, and who is the functional spoke for that, and what is the status of that query. Like that, you can mention whatever the queries you have in a query log document. So whenever a query is discussed in that meeting, they will provide the clarifications here. Like this, you can say that yes, we are using query log for logging the queries in the requirements, right? Next, question number 29, bridge call. What is bridge call? It is a conference call which is used to discuss project related details with the project team members, like requirements or scope of the requirements, or bug fixing details, or about status of the project, and all roadmap of the project, like several things we can discuss related to the project with the all the team members of the project. Then we are going to schedule a meeting with them, that will be called as a bridge call, right? Next, question number 30, which repository server you are using in your project? So you can say that repository servers like svn or github or bitbucket, whatever the tool that you are using, you should explain that name, and right. Yes. Question number 31, what is the check-in and checkout? What is the check-in and checkout? So in the svn, right, the process of committing the code from local system to repository system is called check-in, and the process of moving, or the process of taking code from repository system to local system, is called as checkout. Checkout means taking the code from the repository to the local. Check-in means moving the changes from local system to repository system, right? So in this svn, it is called checkout and check-in. If we are using github, then we called as push and pull. Pull means taking the code from repository to the local. Push means sending the code from local to repository, right? How you will do code checking? So this is very very important, because there is a chance of getting overriding problems and conflicts while committing the code. So whenever you are done with the changes of your files, before checking those files, first we need to compare the files with the repository. If you see any new changes in the repository, then you should take update of those changes. Then you need to commit your changes with those changes as well. We should not commit the files directly without comparison and without taking the update. So you should explain the procedure. First I will write the changes in my files. So then when I want to commit those files, I will compare my file with the repository file. If there are no changes in the repository, then directly I will can commit my file. If there is a change in the repository, then I will take update of those changes. I will make sure code is not overriding, or there is no chance of getting compilation errors and conflicts. After making sure that, then I will push my code from the local system to repository system. That is called as a commit process or check-in process. All right. Coming to question number 33. So when you say that svn or github, they will ask you what are the client softwares that you are using for svn. So generally, svn server will be installed in one computer, that is centralized system. Clients will be installed in several computers. So for the svn, we can use Tortoise svn as a client, or we can use Subclipse plugin as a client. If you are working with IDE, then it's better to go for Subclipse, right? Fine. Next one. Question number 34. Have you ever used VPN? The first VPN stands for virtual private network, which is like a firewall to access client specific data like project source code or functional design documents or technical design documents or bug reports, minutes of meetings, all the information related to your project that will be stored in SharePoint, right, or some other servers. So in order to access the data, we need to connect to a VPN. Once we join in a company, we can send a request for the project manager to provide the VPN access. They will provide username and password. Most of the companies will use Cisco AnyConnect as a VPN software. Right. Next. What is debugging? For developer, this is very important. Debugging is a process of executing code step by step, which is used to identify bugs in the code. So if you don't know what is this debugging, please go to my YouTube channel, that is Ashok IT School. So here I prepared a 40 minutes of video to understand the debugging very clearly. All right. Next, what is the difference between debugging and testing? So debugging is done by developer to identify the bug and to fix the bug, whereas testing will done by testers, which is used for identifying the bugs. In that video, I discussed very clearly what is debugging, what is testing, and what are the several debugging shortcuts are available like F5, F6, F7, F8, and drop to frame. Right. The next one, what is drop to frame? So drop to frame means whenever we are executing a method, we reach to end of the method, but we did not get the actual idea how that method got executed. Then we can go for drop to frame in order to re-execute that method. Fine. Next one. Can we change value of a variable when the program is running? Yes, of course, we can do that by using debugging. So let me show you a simple demo here. Here I have a class calculator where I have kept a breakpoint here. Let me debug this. Debug as, right click on this, debug as Java application. Now breakpoint is there at the 6th line. Program is stopped there. Now press F6 to go to the next line. Then this method got executed and I got the result. Mouse over on the result variable 30. So here if you see variable palette is available, then expand this, value is there as a 30. Now I am modifying the value to 60. So what is the result value? Now 60. If I complete this execution, which will be printed, 60 is printing, but actually 10 plus 20, 30 should be printed because we are changing the value in the variable. So it is possible to change the value of a variable when the program is under debug mode. So they may ask you like this, have you ever done values changes in the debug mode? Yes, we can do that. This why we need to change these values. When we are running when we are testing our program, several conditions I need to test, right? So then I can change the value of the variable, then I can complete the testing of all my code. Fine. Now, have you ever worked with the debug shell? Yes, yeah. Whenever we are debugging that code, right? Debug as Java program is under debug mode. Here you can go for debug cell where you can write some code. Or suppose if there is a string value, I want to convert into uppercase, or I want to convert into lowercase, or I want to execute a condition. So you can write some code here. String dot value of some 10 like this, control shift I. So the code is getting executed. So whatever the string dot some methods that you can call in the runtime by using this debug shell. So if you want to execute some piece of code in the program under execution, then you can use this debug shell. If you don't see this debug shell here, you can go to window, show view, there is an option called debug shell, then it will be printed where you can write the code when the program is under execution. So you can say that yes, we use debugging shell. Next, what is unit testing? So very interesting question, right? So unit testing is a level of software testing where individual components of the software is tested, which is used to make sure whatever the code we have written is working as expected, right? Generally, developer is responsible to perform unit testing. To perform this unit testing, we will use tools like JUnit and Mockito. Fine. So you should know the unit testing. Fine. Now for the unit testing also, I prepared a video in my channel. Here JUnit with Mockito video is there. You can understand what is unit testing and what is JUnit and what is Mockito here. So please watch these videos so that you will get the clarity on that. Next. So tell me few annotations available in the JUnit. That is question number 43. Here you should know the annotations of the JUnit like before class, after class, @before, @after, and @test. Fine. Next one, do you know mocking? Yes, as a developer we will perform unit testing. As part of that unit testing, sometimes we need to go for mocking. So first, what is mocking? It is a process of creating substitute objects while performing unit testing. Mocking means it is imitating something. Now when we are using mocking in unit testing, an object that you want to test may have dependency on the another complex object. That means one of my component wants to talk to another component, that another component is not available at this moment. I don't want to wait for other component to be available in order to test my component. Then in order to proceed with the testing, I will create a substitute for the dependent component for my component. Then I can perform my unit testing. The process of mimicking or imitating the components is called mocking. Fine. Question number 45. Could you please explain a scenario where you used mocking? So you can say scenarios like in my application I have a controller classes. So in order to perform the unit testing for a controller, I created mock objects for that so that I can test my controller components or I can test my service components. So you can say one scenario where you used that mocking, or else suppose one more scenario you can say that my application wants to interact with one REST API, which is a third-party API. So the third-party API has some issues for last 1 week. The application is down from the third-party company. So in order to complete the unit testing of my component, I need that third-party API, but that is down. So instead of waiting for that third-party API, I created a mock for that. Then I completed unit testing of my components. Like this, you can explain several reasons where you used mocking in your project. All right. Question number 46. How will you debug an issue in your production environment? This is also very important, right? So generally, as we discussed, project will contain several environments. So when we deploy the code in the higher environments like SITR, UATR, pilot or production, there is a chance of getting some bugs. In order to identify those bugs, generally we will use log files. So application is going to use log files to write the behavior of the application. Using that log files, we can understand where exactly the issue is occurred, like which class, which method, and what is the line number, what is the root cause of the problem. Everything that we can get by using log files. So for this particular question, you can say that using log files, I can identify where exactly the issue is occurring. So this is one mechanism to debug issues in the higher environment. All right. Question number 46. What is logging? So logging is a fancy word to define process of writing down everything that you do. So generally, when the application is executing, how which if methods are executed, which lines from where to where the control is flowing, or all the behavior of the project, you can log to a log file. That process is called logging. Right. Next, tell me logging levels. So there are several levels like trace, debug, info, warn, error, and fatal. When you set the level as a debug, it is going to print all the messages from debug to higher environment. If you set the level as a error, it will print only error and fatals. So guys, if you don't know what is this logging and how to work with logging, already we have very nice video in our YouTube channel, Log4j tutorial. So go to my YouTube channel, that is Ashok IT School, and click on the Log4j playlist. Total 4 videos are there where I discussed about what is logging, how to work with logging, and how to perform log monitoring by using several tools like Putty and WinSCP. Right now, so question number 49: which log level your project having in production? So you can say that my production environment will not be managed by the developers, so that is going to managed by a separate infrastructure team, or DevOps teams will be available. So you can say that a level name like info or warn or error or fatal, that any level that is configured the production system. If you really want to know that, you can talk to your infra team. They will tell you which level they configured. Generally in the productions, they will configure info level, not the debug level. They will configure info level or higher level than the info. All right. Next, question number 50: what is Putty and WinSCP? Here these are the tools that are used for log monitoring. So generally we will do the development of the project in Windows operating system, but the code will be deployed into higher environments, SIT, UAT, production in the Linux operating system. And higher environment systems may not be available in the same location. Suppose I am working in Hyderabad, my UAT happening in the USA. That UAT system is deployed in the Linux machine. The logs are generating in the Linux machine, but I'm in the Hyderabad. So do I really need to go to US to check the log file? No. By using this Putty and WinSCP tools, I can connect from my Windows machine to Linux machine. Right? So Putty, which is used to see the ongoing logs. If you want to download the complete log file from the Linux machine to your machine, then you can go for WinSCP. How to use this Putty and WinSCP, I explained in our Log4j video. So how log monitoring can done, you can watch this video so that you will get the clarity. Right? So just you should have a basic idea what is Putty and WinSCP. These are the open source tools that are used for log monitoring. Or generally we can use these tools for connecting from Windows operating system to Linux operating system. Rest. Next, question number 51: have you ever used Splunk? Yes, nowadays this is a very trending tool in the market for log monitoring and for log reporting. So you should say that yes, it is a log reporting tool that is I'm using in my project production environment. So if you observe, these 3 tools are for same purpose like that, right? Putty, WinSCP, and Splunk. Putty and WinSCP are the open source tools where we can use from to connect from Windows to Linux. But Splunk is a commercial tool which is used for log monitoring. Suppose I want to get the logs for last 5 minutes, or I want to get the logs of the last Monday from morning 10 a.m. to 10:05 p.m. So if you want to get the specific period logs from the log files, then you can go for this Splunk tool, which is costly tool. So once in the company, they will use the Splunk tools for production logs mounting. So you will write some basic queries in the Splunk to get those logs based on the requirement. So again, in this log4j video, I discussed how can we logs monitoring using Splunk tool. Right here, you can understand by using this part 3 video, you can understand how we can use the Splunk tool in order to monitor the logs. Right. Next one. Question number 52. Have you ever handled exceptions in your project and how you handled? So this is a very basic thing for a developer, right? Whenever we are working in the project development, there is a chance of getting several exceptions in the project. So those things we should handle. So that is part of our daily life. So whenever project is executing, we may get several issues like null pointer exceptions, array index out of bound exceptions, or SQL exceptions, right? Instead of displaying the exceptions directly to the end user, we will convert that exception to a meaningful message like some problem occurred, please try again later. So sorry for inconvenience caused, please try after some time, or we are looking into your case, like that. We need to display some meaningful messages to the users. So how we can handle that exceptions? Spring provided a beautiful mechanism to handle the exceptions with a global exception handling mechanism or controller based handling mechanism. Again, sir, if you don't know how to handle the exceptions in the project, I'm saying that there is a video I uploaded for exception handling. Here you can see exception handling in the Spring, exception handling in the MVC flow, and exception handling in the REST API. Here I discuss about what is exception handling, how to create user defined exceptions, and how to handle exceptions in the MVC, how to handle the exceptions in the REST API. So please go through this video, then you will get crystal clear clarity about how to handle the exceptions in the project. All right. Next question number 53. Very interesting question. That is, what is the complex situation you have faced in your current project and how you solved that situation? All right, most of the people will get confused here, what I need to explain, how I need to convey the interviewer, like that, right? So you can explain a simple scenario like this, what I had done in my previous company. You can say that in my current project we are having so many batches which are going to execute in the night time. Those batches are used to perform the bulk operations like plans renewal or plans termination or renewal the plan for next year, or sending the notifications to the customer related to their eligibility. To perform these bulk operations, we are having so many batches. As the batches are executing in the night time, several batches are running on the GVMs, right? So my performance is taking execution is taking more time. Performance of the batches are very slow, but client is not happy with the behavior, and but we don't have proper infrastructure in order to do that. Then that is one of the complex situation I have faced, and I resolved this problem by using multi-threading, and I improved the performance of the batch execution. To tune the performance of the batch, we struggled almost a month to implement a parallel instances processing and all those things, like that. You can explain one of the situation related to batch execution. Right. Next one. Question number 54. Where you have used multi-threading in the project. As we discussed earlier, right? Batches are taking so much time and they are processing so many records in the database. In order to complete the batch processing quickly, we have used multi-threading in the project, like that. You can say that, and you can take an example. One of the batches there in my project, which is on daily basis, which is going to identify the records, or which are going to identify the plans which are going to terminate in the next 10 days, and it is going to read all the customers data, and it is going to send the notifications to the customers in the PDF format, right? As it is processing the record one by one, to improve the performance, we implemented multi-threading in the project. So whenever you are explaining these situations, you should be able to write the code if at all he asks to write it. So like by implementing a callable interface, or using completable future objects which are added in the Java 8, or you can use executor services to work with the multi-threading in the project. So if they ask you what is multi-threading, you should tell why multi-threading and where exactly you have used in your project also. So you can tell one batch execution situation where we implemented multi-threading in the project. Next, question number 55. How batches are scheduled in your project? So as we discussed, so many batches are executing in the night time, right? So are we going to execute the batches manually by using Java commands and all? No, we are going to use some tools to schedule the batches. So here you can say In our company, we are using a commercial tool that is called Opcon Scheduler to schedule the batches. Right. So one is a famous tool that is Opcon Scheduler, which is used to schedule the batches. Now, next question number 56. In my company, we don't have license for Opcon Scheduler. Then how you will run batches in the project? This is again a tricky to check your technical skills and your expertise, right? So you told that you are working on the batches, you are using a tool to schedule the batches. Suppose if you want to work in a project where the batches are there but they don't have a license or they don't have a money to purchase the license, then how can you schedule the batches? Here we can say that we can do the batch scheduling by using a third-party open source APIs like Quad API, which is a very famous API to schedule the tasks or to schedule the jobs on frequent times, like daily, at what time the batch has to execute, we can configure. And a Spring framework is also supporting for the scheduling of the tasks. So in the Spring, we need to use two annotations like @enable scheduling and @schedule annotations. For this schedule annotation, we can add the cron expression like at what time the job has to start, at what time the Java program has to start execution. Daily night at 10 p.m. my program has to start, or a daily every year on the January 1st my program has to start. So based on the requirement, we can write cron expressions for @schedule annotation. So we can schedule the jobs in the Spring also by using schedule annotation with the help of enable scheduling annotation. These are the two annotations that can be used to schedule the batches. If you have a commercial tool license, then you can use it, or if you don't have that license, then you can go for open source APIs like Quad, or we can take the help of Spring also to schedule the batches. Next, question number 57. What is the difference between authentication and authorization? So this is also very interesting question for experienced persons, and we should know what is the difference between these two. First, what is authentication? Authentication is used for credential checking. When a user is trying to log in into the application, we need to validate whether he is a authorized user or whether he is a whether the credentials are valid or not in order to access our system or not. That is called authentication. Authenticating the credentials of the user to allow him to access our project. Next, authorization. Once the user is logged into the system, we don't allow him to access each and everything available in the project. Generally, our applications are role based applications. So based on his role, we will check whether he can access this particular functionality or not. That is called authorization. Authentication is used for credentials checking. We will use this when user is trying to log in into application. Authorization will perform to check whether user can access the specific functionality in the project or not. Generally, like role-based applications will perform these authorizations. Right. Next, question number 58. Where you have used REST API in your project? And nowadays, everything is REST, right? So you should be able to explain a scenario where exactly you are using the REST APIs. Are you developing a REST controllers? Or you are developing the REST APIs? That means REST clients or REST resources in your project. Now everything is microservices. Every microservice is a REST API. I hope you know what is microservice already, right? Now, so you can let me tell you one simple scenario where exactly we used that REST API in our project. You can say like this: as part of our application, we are hitting the rules engine to determine eligibility of a person when he applied for a plan. The rules APIs are running in the another server which is exposed as a REST API. So when the person is trying to determine the eligibility, our application will interact with the REST API to execute those business rules. That REST API will decide whether that person plan is approved or denied. Here, rules API developed by some company, and that is the REST controllers are there. Here we are accessing the REST controller, so we are playing the REST client role here. Right? You should be able to explain a scenario where exactly you use that REST API. Next, very interesting question and very important also. That is question number 59. How to secure REST APIs? So as we discussed in the REST APIs, right? Two parties will be involved. One is class a client and another one is a resource. Clients are going to access the resources. Now the question: can everybody access the REST API? No. So we are going to do business with only some people. Only our partners should be able to access our APIs. Then how to secure our REST API? There are several mechanisms to secure the REST APIs. One is by using basic authentication. Basic, that means very basic authentication that is not recommended for the production environments. Now, recommended approaches are SSL certificate based authentications or OAuth based authentication. Nowadays, people are using OAuth to secure the REST APIs. It is a token based mechanism. And you can say that there are several ways are available in our project. We are using SSL certification or we are using OAuth based mechanism to secure our REST APIs. So you should know the procedure also, how to work with that certificate and how to work with that OAuth when if we ask to explain those details internally. So we should be careful about that, because security is one of the most important concept in the project development, right? Yes. Next one, question number 60. What is a Swagger? So generally, when we are working with SOAP web services, two parties will be there. One is a consumer and provider. Provider details will be given to the consumer in the form of digital document. That is from the SOAP web services. When it comes to the REST, digital files will not be available. So how to describe the REST API to the clients? That's where this is Swagger comes into picture. So Swagger is a third-party library which is used to generate documentation for the REST APIs. How to work with this Swagger and what are the annotations available in the Swagger? So this is the question number 61. Tell me few annotations available in a Swagger, like at the rate API, at the rate API operation, API model, and at the rate response, like that several annotations that we are there in the Swagger, we can explain him. And we should tell what is the purpose of these annotations and how you use in your current project. So guys, always remember that whenever you are giving an answer to your question, definitions are not sufficient. You should tell the reason and you should tell the situation, you should tell the use case where you implemented in the project. Then only he will be satisfied with your answers. All right. Next one. Question number 62. What is the bug reporting tool that you are using in your project? Nowadays, people are using Jira as a bug reporting tool in the project. There are several other tools also like Bugzilla and Jira also we can use as a bug reporting tool. First, what is this bug reporting? Why this bug reporting? So as I discussed, several environments application will be tested like SIT and UAT, right? When those testers identified a defect, they are not going to fix it. They need to report that bug to a developer. So to report that bug, they will use a bug reporting tool, that is a Jira and or Bugzilla, right? Next, question number 63. How task will be assigned to you? This is also very confusing question for the people who don't have experience. How they will assign the task to us once you join in the company, right? So task assignment is happening through several channels. So some companies, some projects which are following the agile methodology, they will use a Jira tool to create the stories and to assign the tasks. In some companies, tasks will be assigned in a meeting, and in some companies tasks they will send in your emails. Like that several ways the task can be assigned, that depends on your team lead and the project manager and the software methodology that you are following in your project. So you can say that my project is following a agile methodology, so they are creating the stories for the sprint and they are assigning the stories by using Jira tool, right? Next, question number 64. How many database tables are there in your project? This is also again a tricky question just to check your confidence levels. So you can tell some random number because that person will not come to your office to count the number of tables what you told is correct or not. So just like if it is a enterprise application, you can say that 2000 3000 tables are there in my project. Just tell you one random number and be confident about that. And some people will ask a question, how many classes you have created in your project? This is also a tricky question. Generally we don't count how many classes that we are going to create in the project, right? So just tell that I created so many classes but I never counted them. So you know to tell the random number. Tables means random number, fixed number will be there, but classes who will count those, right? So you can tell some random number, or you can say that I created many classes in my first experience but I never counted them, like thousands of classes I created but I don't know the exact count. Like that you can tell that one, right? Next, uh, question number 65. Application is taking a lot of time to respond in production. How you will identify the root cause? So this is also a important question for experienced person. When the applications are deployed in the production, sometimes the slowness will be there. That slowness may not be only from the code standpoint. Here we need to identify several reasons, like what is the network speed and how much time is taking by code, how much time our DB is taking to execute that queries, and if we need to check the thread dumps and heap dumps, we need to use the Java profilers to check the dumps of the threads and to check the dumps of the heap, right? And by using all these informations, then I can identify where exactly it is taking time to respond. So like that you can explain. I will try to identify, I will try to troubleshoot the problem in the several aspects like network speed, code execution time, DB execution time, and I will monitor the heap dumps and heap dumps in the JVM, and I will perform thread dumps by using profilers to understand the root cause. Like that, you should explain that. So fine. Next one, question number 66. How many environments are there in your application? I think this is a duplicate. Already we covered, right? Dev environment, SIT, UAT, pilot, and production. Like that, several environments will be there for our application. Now, next question is interesting. Question number 67. How build is deploying to higher environments in your project? Right, generally as a developer we'll do the coding in the local and we'll commit the code to repository. Then how that code will be moved to integration environments and SIT, UAT and productions, right? There should be some team who is going to deploy that code to higher environment, right? You can say that we have a DevOps team to perform the deployments in the higher environment. So they are using some automation tools to achieve CI and CD, that is continuous integration and continuous deployment. Jenkins tool we are using to perform auto deployments in our project. So again guys, if you don't know what Jenkins and how to work with the Jenkins, here I created almost 9 videos to understand what is a CI and CD, what is a Jenkins, how can we work with the Jenkins, what is a pipeline, how to enable email notifications in the Jenkins. All those things are discussed in my Jenkins video, which is there in my channel, that is Ashok IT School. Please watch those videos, then you will get the complete clarity how the deployments are happening for the higher environments in the project, right? Have you ever used Jenkins? Nowadays almost all the companies are using CI and achieving CI and CD by using Jenkins, so you should also tell that yes, I know how to use the Jenkins. I'm hoping that you will watch those videos, then you can confidently talk about the Jenkins in the interview. Yes, in my project we are using Jenkins for auto deployments. Next question, what is pipeline in Jenkins? Again guys, just two lines of statement will not give you a clarity here, so please watch that Jenkins video. There I spend some time to understand the pipeline and to create how to create the pipeline. For overview, pipeline is a group of events that are interconnected with each other in a sequence. Suppose I want to do the deployment in the dev, then QA, then UAT. So here I am going to create a pipeline with these 3 jobs. If the job deployment is completed successfully in the dev, then only deploy that in the QA. If the QA deployment is successful, then only deploy that in the UAT. So these 3 jobs are interconnected. That is called pipeline in the Jenkins, right? Who will create a pipeline in your project? So generally in the companies, DevOps teams will be available. They are responsible for this build management. So they are going to create a pipeline. So whenever we need a pipeline as a developer, we are going to send a request to the DevOps team with our manager permission. Then those people are going to create the pipeline. To create that pipeline, we need to give the information like what is the repository we are using and what is the repository URL and all those branch name and all those things. Then they are going to create a pipeline for our requirement, right? So do you know how to enable email notifications in the Jenkins? Yes, because in the Jenkins video you can see how to enable the email notifications. Fine. Next, which tool you are using to review your source code? Code review is very important thing in the project development. So whenever we do some coding, we may, as a human being, will write some mistakes. We'll forget to follow the naming conventions, or we'll forget to add the comments, or we will keep unwanted methods in the code, or we will use unwanted imports in the class, and we don't do the proper exception handling, or we don't do the proper null checks. All these things can be identified in the code review. So in order to review that code, there are several open source tools like programmer mistake detector and SonarQube. So you tell one name of the tool, one tool name like PMD or SonarQube, which is used to perform code review. So generally in the companies, code review will happen in 2 ways. One is a peer review, another one is a tool review. Peer review means my code will be reviewed by my colleague, his code will be reviewed by some other person, that manually we will do the code review, that is called peer review. And we will automate that code review process by using SonarQube. This is SonarQube plugin we can configure in the Jenkins. Whenever the deployment is happening in the environment, Jenkins will do that code review. If the quality gateway is passed as part of the code review, then only deployment will continue. Otherwise, it is going to stop the deployment. So you can say one tool name that is using for code review. You must say that yes, I have done the code review by using this tool, because that is part of our development. That is one of the role of the developer. Fine. Next question, question number 73. What is the code coverage tool using in your project? First of all, what is a code coverage? Right? We are going to perform unit testing of our code by using JUnit. As part of the unit testing, how many lines of our source code is tested? We need to measure that. For that, we are going to use code coverage tool. How much is source code is tested as part of the unit testing by using JUnit? To measure that, to generate a report for that, we are going to use a code coverage tool. There are several tools are available for performing this code coverage. One of the tool is Jacoco. So we can say that Jacoco is a plugin in the pom.xml. If you use that Jacoco plugin, then it will tell you how much percentage of the code is tested in the unit testing. Fine. This is also important factor for the projects. Next, what is a Scrum and Sprint? So as we discussed, the Scrum is a daily stand-up meeting where we are going to discuss with the Scrum Master what we have done yesterday and what is the plan for today. Are we facing any problems in doing our tasks in the given time? Those things that all the team members will join in a meeting and will discuss for some time. The duration of the Scrum will not be more than 30 minutes. So that Scrum meetings are going to conducted by Scrum Master. Right. Next one. This procedure you can see in the agile methodology development. Next one, sprint. A sprint is a duration of delivery of a project. So the specific time frame like 2 weeks or 3 weeks will be the duration of a sprint. Sprint means these many tasks that we are going to deliver to the client within the given time. Scrum is a daily stand-up meeting. Sprint is a release. How many tasks that we are going to deliver to a client within the given amount of time. These two words related to agile methodology. Next. Yeah, the one next question is the question number 75. In your resume, you mentioned Linux operating system. Tell me some Linux commands. Right, this is also important for experienced person because we are going to work with log files in the project. Logs will be generating in the Linux machine. By using putty, we are going to connect with that Linux machines, right? So we should know some commands that are from Linux operating system. List command ls, grep command, which is used to search for something in a file. Cp, copy command, remove to delete your files. Head, to get the data from the top of the file, we will use head command. To get the data from bottom of the file, we will use the tail command. If you want to edit any particular file, then we can go for vim commands. So these are some basic commands that we should know from the Linux operating system as an experienced person, because in the project log files will be there. To monitor those logs or to get the log messages, we should use putty. To use the putty, we should know the Linux machine commands, Linux operating system commands. These are the several basic commands that are there in the Linux operating system. Fine. Next, have you ever involved in a KT session? Question number 76. First, KT stands for knowledge transfer. So when you newly joined in a project, you don't know anything about the project. In order to start working on that project, you should get some knowledge about the project. Existing project team members will provide you some information related to that project, that is called as a knowledge transfer. Or in your current project, if some new person joined, you should provide knowledge to that person about your project, that is called KT session. So you can say that yes, I involved in the knowledge transfer sessions. When I joined in the company, my team member provided me a KT, and 1 month back one new person joined in our company in our project. For them I provided a KT about my project, like that. Right. Question number 77. Why you want to change from your current job? Yes, interesting, right? So here you can say that from 3 years I'm working for the same company daily. I'm seeing the same screens and routine stuff. I want to improve my domain skills, and I want to improve my functional knowledge and technical knowledge. I want to work with new technologies because I'm looking for a career growth. That's why I'm looking for a job change. And the most important thing is salary hike, right? In the software industry, there is a slogan: rolling stone gains more mass. How many companies you change, that much salary you are going to get, right? Yeah, I'm joking that. Generally most of the people will change for salary growth and to enhance their technical skills and all those things, right? So you can say any one of the reason here, like career growth or latest technologies want to work on, or I'm looking for a salary growth because of these reasons I want to change from my current company, like that you can explain, right? Next one, question number 78. If one of your team member not completing task on time, then how you will deal with him? So this is like checking your attitude and checking your behavior. You should be flexible to the project, right? And you should know how to deal with the people. Fine. So you can say like this, if any person is not working properly, first I will guide them to understand the requirements and to do the things properly. I will help them in the initial stages to make sure he will complete his tasks on time. After doing all these things also, still if he's not meeting his goals, so then I will escalate it to my higher authority like my manager, saying that this person is not working. Even I tried helping him, but he's not grabbing the things on time. I cannot work with this person, and I will escalate to my manager. So like this you can explain this question, right? Next one, question number 79. Have you ever provided a data fix for a production system? Yes, so data fix is also a very very interesting concept when the project is in the production environment. So then in the applications we have a batches, right? Batches are going to perform the bulk operations on the database for the business conditions and for the business situations. Suppose let's assume a scenario, one of the batch is executed with the incorrect date, or one of the batch executed with the incorrect logic, which corrupted so much data in the database, like it has terminated all the people plans incorrectly because of some coding issue or because of some exception in the code. The batch processed the records triggers incorrectly, all the people plans got terminated, which is not unexpected behavior. Then what we need to do? Are the clients are going to accept if the plans are terminated? No, right? Then what we need to do? We need to flip the data, or we need to move the data back to the previous state. So that's where we are going to update the data in the database directly. So that updating the data in the database from the production system is called as a data fix. So we should be very careful while we are working with the data fix in the production. We need to get lot of approvals from the managers and the quality team and from the client, then only we can proceed with the data fix. Generally in the companies, data fix situations will be there for the production system, where we are going to update the data in the backend directly in order to make sure our customers will not complain about the project, right? So you can also say that yes, in my company, in my project, last month one of the batch executed incorrectly due to some exception, so it corrupted almost 10,000 records in the back end of the customer's plans data. Then we identified how many records are corrupted by this batch execution. Then we flipped those records back to the normal state or pending state to reprocess them with the current logic. So that's where I provided a data fix for the production system. Like this you can explain that. All right, next, question number 80. How you will do DDL change in SIT or UAT environments? First of all, DDL, data definition language, like adding a new column to the table or modifying the column name or modifying the data type of the column. These things comes under DDL. So generally as a developer, we cannot perform this DDL directly on the higher environment like SIT or UAT. You cannot change the database directly, right? We need to follow the proper channel to do these changes to the database. So every project will have a dedicated the database team. For them we need to send a request. If you want to create a new table in the database, we need to send the request to them with the proper information: what is the table name, what are the columns, what is the primary key, what is the sequence required, and what is the name of the sequence, what is what are the indexes you want for the table, what are the triggers that are required for the table. All these informations we need to send to the DB team, where they are going to create for that, where they are going to help us in order to perform the DDL changes to the project. So then some companies will use ticket mechanism. If you want a change in the DB, you need to raise a request in the Jira, assign the request to the database team, then they are going to work on that task. In some companies, the request will be sending in the form of emails, where we will loop our manager and a team lead saying that, hey database administration team, please change the column name from this value to this value as part of so and so requirement. Then manager has to approve, then they are going to take that activity, they are going to do that. But as a developer, generally we don't do that change in the database directly, we will not have the access for that. Fine. Next one, question number 81. Have you done any documentation for project? Yes, generally project managers are very 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 interested about the documentation, right? So you need to convey them or you need to satisfy them by saying that yes, I prepared some service documents and release documents for my project. Suppose when you are implementing a microservices in the project, you should provide the information about your service, what the service is doing, from where the request is coming, what is the processing is happening in the service, what is the response it is going to return, if the exception occurs, how the API is going to behave. All that information we need to maintain in a document that is called service document. And sometimes when you are releasing a project to the production, you need to specify the release document also, like what are the endpoints of the API and several informations that we need to capture, right? And some user documentation also will be available, like to provide the KTs for the new users, we need to provide documentation. So you need to say that yes, I involved in the documentation of service and release documents and user guides I prepared for my project. So then he will feel bit happy, yes, because you know the documentation also. All right, next, question number 82: where you want to see you yourself after 3 years? So that means what is your future plans for next 3 years, right? So generally you can say that you inform him saying that I want to work with the new functional domains and I want to improve my knowledge from the both the functional standpoint as well as the technical standpoint, and I want to learn some new technologies on my own, so which are having a trending in the market, like cloud platforms and dev operations and AWS. I want to learn the new technologies which are having a growth in the future, and I want to do few certifications on like Java certifications, or I want to do or DevOps certifications or Salesforce certifications, so that any technology that I want to learn, I want to make a certified person in that. So like this is the future plan for me, like that you can explain in that interview. Next, what is your notice period? This question to understand how soon you can join in that project, or how soon you can join in a company. So generally that notice period will be there like 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months. So that depends on your company. In your offer letter you can check what is the notice period of your company, then you can say that. If you say 2 months or 3 months is the notice period, then manager may ask you, is it possible to negotiate? Because we want a resource like you immediately, then can you how soon you can join? Then you may say that I need to talk to my manager and my HR team to negotiate. Officially my notice period is 2 months. I need to talk to my manager how soon he can release me, then I can update you. So like that you can explain what is your notice period, is it possible to negotiate it or not.